Hello everyone, we are coming to you live from the Book Club Girl Facebook page. Today we have Virginia Stanley from the library marketing team at HarperCollins, joined by the acclaimed author Mary Hogan, author of Two Sisters, The Woman in the Photo, and then her new novel Left, which goes on sale June 19th. Today they'll be discussing Left, but please do ask questions and you will be entered in for a chance to win copies of Mary's previous books, along with a galley of Left.
Thank you, Chris. And thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to meet you. So I'm Virginia Stanley, as Chris said, Director of Library Marketing at HarperCollins Publishers. Library Love Fest is our team, and we're glad to be sharing this with Book Club Girl. And I am so excited to meet you because I love this book so much. So I love you.
Oh, I'm glad.
Oh, my God.
I'm glad.
Seriously, I'm fangirling like a crazy person because this book is this book will touch your heart, and it will stay there forever. I can guarantee you that. All right, so calm down. Let me just introduce Mary and stop babbling. Here we go. Mary.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you doing, Virginia?
Fine, thank you.
Good.
Okay, so Mary, you are the NAPA, which is National Parenting Product Awards award-winning author. So I think Mary has written 7 young adult books in addition to her adult books. So I'm bringing that up for 2 reasons. One, I think that it's, hey, listen, people need to know the breadth of your writing and the versatility of your writing. And also the fact that your YA books get this seal of approval, I think is a wonderful thing. And so I think it needs to be said. So I wanted to get that out there. And I wanted to talk about just the versatility of your writing first. So, as I say, you've got your YA books, Two Sisters, which was your debut adult book, which got wonderful reviews. Booklist loved it. Adriana Trigiani said that this was loaded with emotion, laughter, surprise, and ultimately the message of the fragility of life. Two Sisters will burn through the sisterhood of book clubs like a fever.
I love Adriana, by the way. That was so nice of her to say.
Well, it's a great book. It's a wonderful. I can't believe that's your first debut as an adult author. So loved it. And then Woman in the Photo. You want to talk about that for a second?
Well, I want to tell you a little secret, just between you and me.
All right, what is it?
When I wrote my first novel, I had no idea I was writing young adult. I was writing about a 14-year-old character who was trapped in her crazy family, not unlike me when I was 14 in my family. And I wrote this story about a family, pretty much. And then I sent it out to a bunch of agents, and a bunch of agents rejected me, and they said, well, I'm sorry, we don't handle YA. And I thought, what is YA? I mean, I'm not kidding. I was so clueless.
Wow.
This was way back before young adult became a genre.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know what I was doing. So I found an agent who did handle YA and got published, and then was thrust into the young adult genre, which I really loved. I loved writing about all the angst of my own teenhood and my own family, and so I hadn't intended to go down that road, but it was really a happy road to go down. And when I was done with pretty much mining everything from my teenhood, I decided to give a try to write adult, and that's how Two Sisters came about.
Can you talk about that for just I know we want to get to Left, but I want to give those other 2 books their due. And so could you talk about Two Sisters for a second and the inspiration for that book?
Well, I'll tell you, I was trying to think of what to write. And Two Sisters is a really personal story. It was inspired by my own sister who died. And at the time when I was trying to think of what to write, my sister had been sick with cancer. She got better, and then it came back. But I was never ever worried about her because she used to tell me she was fine. I lived in New York, she lived in California. I didn't see her that often, and she didn't want to talk about it, and I just took it at face value.
Yeah.
And in fact, I saw her a couple of months before she died, and I didn't even notice how sick she looked. I didn't even know she was wearing a wig. I mean, I look back and I'm like, my denial too. But so when she passed away, it was such a blow. It was such a shock. Yeah. And I was so hurt that my sister what did I do to her? Why wouldn't she say goodbye? Why wouldn't, you know? So I really just didn't understand what had happened. And as writers do, I did this little writing exercise. I thought, I'm going to try to understand what it was like to be her at the end of her life so that I can be there with her. This is my way to be there with her. And I wrote my imagining of what it was like for her, and that became chapter 22 of Two Sisters. I took this real event and created a fictional story around it. It's really about a family full of secrets, which related definitely to the fact that my sister kept her dying a secret, which was pretty shocking. But I think that theme of secrets and families that are kind of dysfunctional definitely went through my teen books all the way through to this. So, yeah, it's. I think she would be happy at the way it turned out. I hope.
I was going to ask you, did you feel like it was a cathartic thing for you?
Absolutely. And I did it kind of like a reporter. I interviewed her husband, her kids. She didn't tell her kids even.
Wow.
I mean, it was just like this. I don't even know anybody who would ever do that, but she did. And pieced together the story of the end of her life. So it really worked that I could empathize with her. I started to understand why she didn't want everybody fussing all over her, and she didn't tell our mother. It was just crazy. But it was kind of the beginning of my grieving process. This whole book was my grieving process. Left is a little bit of my grieving process too. So, I guess that's how I process emotions, really, is to try to make sense of them in a way that somebody else could read it and relate.
Right. That's what I think makes your books stand out for me, is that they are so relatable, and the voices in Two Sisters and in Left, they feel so. I know them. I mean, I was talking with Marissa, who is the head of our video studio, and she had the same response. You feel like you're reading your friend's book. I can't quite explain it except to say that it is the most relatable. They are the most relatable voices, and while these are subjects that are certainly, they have their sorrow. Of course they do, but I don't feel like these are books that are going to make you. You're not going to be. You're also going to walk away happier for knowing these people. That's how I feel about it. That I don't feel like, oh my God, that book, I want to throw myself. That's not how you feel. You feel like, I'm going to take these people with me. That's how I feel. That there's enough humor without going over, which I want to talk to you about, because I feel like however you manage that, and that's a magical trick, is to make these books with this subject something that you want to stay along for the ride, because you can only cry for so long. And so I feel like, everybody says that there are only so many tears, and you don't want to be thrown into a whole well of that. I don't anyway, as a reader, and I feel like as a writer, you pulled that off.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, I really do not want any of my books to be depressing at all.
They're not.
And I'll tell you, with Left, when I first had the idea to write it, I thought, I'm going to try experimenting with something that's part memoir, part novel, meaning I was going to fictionalize some true things that were happening in my marriage, in my life. And that's what I did. And what really came out, I hope, in the final product is that it is part true, part fiction, and part of it is the way I imagine my life to be in a year or two, hopefully a little bit longer than that. But it's true about something big that has happened in my marriage, something big that's happened with my husband, and he's given me permission to talk about it. So when we get there, we can.
Okay.
Are we getting there?
We'll get there. I mean, I just...
Kleenex out.
No,
this is for my hay fever.
Okay, so before we get to Left, let's just talk about the woman in the photo for a hot second.
Oh, okay.
I just want to give all your books
totally
their due.
Different. Yeah,
just to show, as I said, the versatility of your writing ability and how you're able to. I'm curious. First, if you could talk about the woman in the photo just a little bit, and then talk about your approach to that, and then let's talk about Left.
Okay. Well, The Woman in the Photo is an historical novel that's set, part of it is set in the Gilded Age, Pennsylvania in 1889, and then part of it is in modern-day California. And I can tell you that it's one of the events that happens is the Johnstown flood, which I had never even heard about before I decided to write an entire book about it. I couldn't believe I had never heard of this great, great story that is very resonant with today. But many, many years ago, early 90s, my husband was in a play. He's an actor. And he was in a play in New York. And they mentioned something about the Johnstown flood. They mentioned that there was a lake in the sky that had wiped out a town in the valley. A town called Johnstown. Very poetic. And that was that. And then they moved on. And I remember thinking, huh? You know, I grew up in California. There are no mountain lakes, I guess. But I couldn't put my finger on the geography of it. So I went to the library. This is before the internet, which shows how long I've been thinking about writing that book. I went to the library. I looked up what happened in Johnstown in 1889, and it is a story that blew me away. It's got everything. It's got class. It's got disaster. It's got money, poor, rich, poor, real people, Andrew Carnegie and Henry Clay Frick, and some bad actors and some brave people. And it was just this story that captured me. And I thought, someday I'm going to write about the Johnstown flood. And it took me 25 years, I think, 1992. It took me quite a while to get to the place where, okay, I'm ready to do it. And I went to Johnstown many, many times. It's really in the news now because after all this time, you know, Donald Trump went to Johnstown. It was a steel town that went under, and he has been there, and he brought Johnstown into the news again, and people are talking about what happened there. But it's a great, great story. And I had never written historical fiction before.
Crazy.
You know what? Part of this is because I was raised by wolves. Sorry, Mom. Sorry, Dad. I don't know the rules. You know, I never learned any rules, so it never occurred to me I couldn't do anything.
Right.
It never occurred to me that I couldn't just try this, try that, try that.
Love that.
And it's really a testament to my publisher too. Thank you that they allow me to try something different and I'm not locked in just one genre. But I will say The Woman in the Photo, if people don't know the Johnstown story, it's an incredible story with incredible characters, not the least of which is Clara Barton. You know, Clara Barton came, the Johnstown flood put the Red Cross on the map. She was an incredible character, and it was just lucky, lucky, lucky. And I feel really lucky too that Pennsylvania is this giant state, because I pretty much went from one end of Pennsylvania to the other end promoting this book, right, and got so many people interested in that area that it made the book a success. So I was really happy about that.
That's fantastic. Well, I feel like I'm glad that we're talking about those books, because they obviously they have a long shelf life. That book you obviously did a ton of research for. Again, two really different books, and two very successful books, which really speaks to the fact that nobody told you, no, you can't do that, right, which I think is something that the Napa people have to know. Mary was told she can never not do anything.
Never take never.
There's a book, Mary. Write a book about that. Don't tell your kids they can't do something.
And we're coming to you live again from Book Studio 16 and Book Club Girl. We have people watching from all over. We have Carla from Alabama, who loved Two Sisters. We have Betty from Georgia, Elizabeth, and we actually have an interesting question here from Ellie, and she asked, if Two Sisters was a movie, who would you want to play the main characters?
Well, I sounds like Ellie is one of my relatives, because Two Sisters is already been sold to be made. It's already becoming a movie, and it has been cast already. I'm not sure if I can say who the cast is yet, but everybody's been cast, the director's in place, and they're trying to get everybody's schedules. That's what's holding things up. So I would say, I don't know. I don't think I can say. So it's hard for me to say I want somebody else cast when it already has been cast. Ellie, email me in like a month and I'll tell you. I'll tell you who the full cast is, okay? And you can weigh in on it.
I hope you got that, Ellie. And again, if you're watching, please do ask questions. You'll be entered for a chance to win Mary's books, The Woman in the Photo, Two Sisters, and an advanced reader's copy of Left.
Maybe if we can find out that we're allowed to put the cast up, we can put it on Library Love Fest. We'll find out if we're allowed to do that, because that would be very cool.
I can ask the director. I really don't know what the protocol is. I probably should have found out, but ironically, The Woman in the Photo is really the more cinematic book, and Two Sisters is more kind of an indie story, a family story. So it was a happy surprise that's going to be. I can't wait to see my characters, come alive. It's such a bonus, really.
Yeah, that's exciting. I can't wait. Well, okay, we'll get to it all. All right, so we've talked about your YA, and we've talked about
my YA.
Your YA. We talked about your YA, your historical fiction, and Two Sisters, deeply personal book, and the movie. So I want to tell you that when I read this book, Left, I finished the last page and immediately wrote to your editor, Carrie Farron, and I said, I cannot tell you how much I love this book. This thing just whacked me in the heart, and I loved her voice, and I loved these characters, and I just thought this was one of the most authentic books I've ever read. So, I would like to turn this to you now and ask you to talk about the book just as much as you want to tell everybody, because of course we want you to go and read it, but can you talk about the book? What was the inspiration for the book, and if you want to give us a snapshot?
I see this book as it's about a woman who develops a fantasy life to kind of cope with her husband's descent into dementia. And this is about 4 years ago. My husband, Bob Hogan, was diagnosed with a vascular form of cognitive impairment, meaning he's had several mini strokes. He calls it Alzheimer's light, which shows what a funny guy he is still. And it's kind of under the Alzheimer's umbrella are many, many different dementias. And getting this diagnosis was really a body blow. Although I can tell you I had seen signs for 2 years before that. So as I have now learned, many, many, many family members will say the exact same thing. I knew something was wrong. I knew it, but nobody is paying attention. Without giving anything away, I will say that early in the book, I do talk about the true thing that happened to us, which led me to believe something was wrong. I don't want to give anything away, but I'll say that we were on a vacation in a foreign country. And we were on our way to the airport. Bob was driving, and of course I had to go to the bathroom because I'm a girl. I always have to go urgently at the worst possible time. But I went before this interview, so hopefully we'll be fine.
Cut!
Right. So Bob pulls over at this cafe, and I run out. I leave my purse in the car, which has my phone, my money, my passport. I run into the cafe, go to the bathroom, run out, and he's gone. And I stood on that corner for 3.5 hours. Sure, he'd had a heart attack. It was getting pulled out with the jaws of life. I couldn't figure out what on earth, why he would leave me standing on a corner like that. My voice is getting shaky just thinking about it. Yeah. It was a real earthquake in our marriage because I'm not going to tell you what happened, but finding out his decisions, what he decided to do, what led him to leave me to the corner was like, who is this man that I'm married to? We've been married for 34 years now, and at that time we'd been married quite a while. So it was like this, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know why it just was such a shock that he did what he did. And that launched the whole downward spiral into something is wrong here. And so for 2 years, I tried to, I guess I'll have to tell people that he did have some cognitive problem, but I tried to get him to get tested. I tried to took notes. I was like keeping this cheat sheet of all the things he did that were crazy. And a lot of things that happen in an early stage of dementia or Alzheimer's. Bob, by the way, hates the word dementia, as almost every dementia patient does.
I don't blame him.
He does. You can say he has Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
He's like, that's fine. But
Yep.
you say he has dementia, he's like me.
It has a very negative connotation.
It's like an old person
Yeah.
doddering around, and Alzheimer's somehow seems like it's not your fault.
I know it. I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. So it's that D word is kind of banned
Yeah.
in our house, but a lot of the early signs of any kind of cognitive problem are things like they forget to pick you up when they're supposed to, or they act childish, or they're supposed to do a job around the house. It takes them 3 hours to do a half-hour job. So I was constantly like, what happened to you? What, I'm married to a kindergartner? I was always screaming at him, always upset. And it's hard to tell people, my husband is acting like an ass, or he's a jerk, and something's wrong. Nobody would listen to me.
They'd be like, yes, tell me something I don't know.
That's right. And one of the more shocking things was, and this is not uncommon, so if anybody out there, when you know something's wrong, you got to trust yourself and push and push and push. But we shared a GP. We had the same doctor, and I went into the doctor for my checkup, and I told the doctor, something is wrong with Bob. He's not himself. I know, I'm his wife. And he held up his hand and said, you've said enough. Like it was none of my business. I'm like, what? And then he saw Bob, and I'm like, oh, he's fine, And that cost us a year. That cost us a year of not having treatment. And so I wonder if a man, it might be a male-female thing. If a man said, something's wrong with my wife, he might be taken more seriously.
Yeah.
But it's, I just knew. And when he finally got tested after me threatening to leave him, it got that bad, he found out that he had this progressive, incurable disease. And off we were, off we went to the races. So it's, I appreciate you saying that there's humor in the book, but there wasn't humor at the beginning.
No.
I'll tell you, this may be too much into the weeds, but I'll try to make it really quick. I went to an Understanding Dementia meeting at the Alzheimer's Association, and the first thing they said to this room full of caretakers, some of them with their spouse, some of them with their mother, their father, they said, Alzheimer's and other dementias are progressive, incurable diseases that will leave your loved one completely incapacitated and needing 24/7 nursing care. And that, so you need to know that going in, and now we'll talk. And I could the blood drained from everybody's face. We were like, oh my God, went home and cried. I locked myself in the bathroom. I thought, am I going to be able to handle this? And some very wise woman said, you're stronger than you think you are. And I know that that's true. It's become true. So,
wow.
Yeah, so some of the stories in here, it'd be interesting after everybody reads it. They can ask me what's true and what's not true, and I'll tell you.
Well, I've read the book twice now, and I wonder, because we've just met before this interview, what's true and what's not true. But listening to you and thinking about the book, and I draw my own conclusions. But you are stronger than you think, and it goes back to not being raised by wolves.
That's right.
You were strong then.
Yes.
You did this.
Yes,
So,
that's good. My biggest fear was not what was going to happen to me or him dying or him, I just thought, I don't want to be not able to handle it. I don't want to be that wife who's like, I can't deal with this, I'm out of here. And so it was all about trying to make sure that I could get my husband to the end of his life.
Right.
It's also, nursing care is extremely expensive.
Yes, it is.
In New York, it's like, I don't even know how anybody could afford it.
Right.
So it's kind of frightening when you find out all the numbers and things like that.
And the statistics, I'm wondering, people that are watching, I know I read it somewhere. It may have been in your Behind the Book piece about the statistics of people who somebody knows somebody who's affected by this. It's in the thousands, you know. I mean, and so I imagine that there are people who will read this book if they haven't already read the e-galley or the galley, or who are listening now that may be thinking, I know who to give this to, or I need to read this. This is not this again. This is a novel, but infused with what you know, and it's so it resonates. Every page is true. And Faye. Well, let's talk about the characters in the book. Okay. So the two characters at the heart of this book are very different. They're very different in age. They're very different in what they do, in their lives, what their makeup is. Paul is a judge, a New York State Supreme Court judge, a criminal, and Faye is this really cool artist. And there's a big age gap between them, and they are like these two, and I love them. I love them because they're so wonderful together. And then stuff starts to happen, and it's really like, it's so much of what you're saying about how she deals with things, and how frustrating it is for her. And I don't know. Can you talk about why these two characters, which on paper shouldn't get along, they shouldn't be together, but they are, and they are in a very cool way, like a very successful romantic way.
Right. Well,
like they're still hitting the sheets.
Yes.
20 years later. I love that.
I hope Bob doesn't hear that. Oh
God. Sorry, Bob.
I first wanted to just say that I don't see this as a book about Alzheimer's. I think it's like a book about a marriage that goes through something big.
Yeah.
And how they try to navigate it. So hopefully that comes through.
It does.
My husband and I said we've been married 34 years. He's 23 years older than me.
Wow.
So we got married in the 80s when it was scandalous, really. I mean, again, because I didn't know I wasn't supposed to, I'm like, oops, Yep. So, but it was really a love match. Even though he was much older, he has 3 grown children. His oldest son is just a year younger than me. And everybody on earth thought that our marriage would never work. And I remember when people call me a trophy wife, I'm like, awesome, really? That's the coolest thing ever.
That's great. I love that.
We just really got along. My husband and I, to this day, just really get along. And so I wanted Faye and Paul to have a good marriage.
Yeah.
I'm not sure you could go through something like that unless you had a pretty good marriage going in.
Mm-hmm.
But what was the other question? How they?
Well, why do you think they worked? But they were so different, not only in age, but like they're just who they were as people. I love that he. Well, I don't want to give too much away, but I just love that they were so different, and yet they were so on the same page. Like, I think there's a line in the book where you say, like, I keep him calm and he likes my color, or something like that.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And I can tell you from my own marriage, of being married to an older man, age is not the thing that matters to me in a marriage. We had very similar family upbringings. We had similar religious feelings. We had similar takes on life. We had similar sense of humor. All those things that had nothing to do with him being on the earth longer than I was. And I wanted to capture that a little bit with maybe the two of them together made a great single person. They needed each other.
Nice.
They blended in together.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that came out. One of the reasons I made Paul a judge, though, is because in an early dementia, sorry, Bob, in an early Alzheimer's light, one of the first things to go is judgment. And that's a tricky one to say, that's a bad judgment, or why are you making that crazy, why are you doing this crazy thing? But I knew that I wanted to somehow create a character that had faulty judgment. Mm-hmm. And I thought, what better way to have somebody who has a judgment problem than a judge? Mm-hmm. And I sat in on a lot of cases in the courthouse just to research. And I saw how the judges were really God in their courtroom, and I thought a lot could happen with people covering for this guy. A lot of judges do off the wall things, and everybody's just like, well, he's in charge. So I felt that there could be some. I know, terrifying to think
so
about.
terrifying, but true.
And it's there are a lot of documented cases of judges doing wacky things for just because they're weird or something. So anyway, I thought it would be kind of a good conflict and a good way to have a judge who loses his judgment, kind of a good character point. And then Faye, because I work at home, this is very hard to determine what you want your character to do for a living if you don't know what it's like in the corporate world or something. You can't have her be a lawyer, or I wouldn't really know. But I hate writing about writers because it's such a boring thing. You really just sit on your butt and stare, like how dramatic is that? So I wanted to give her some kind of job that gave her some freedom, and also that gave her a life that she was going to have to alter a little bit for her husband. So I came up with the idea of her being an artist. She paints. Can I say what she does?
Sure.
She paints, she has a business called Made on the Shade, and she paints lampshades so that these beautiful scenes shine through. And it's, it turned out to be kind of a fortuitous accident, me trying to figure out how can I give her a job where she's got freedom, she's home, where she can have time, where she doesn't have to be a certain place at a certain time, just as a technical thing. So that's how I came up with it.
I like that, and I like that she's, she does have that. I mean, she's got. I love her friend too.
Oh, Anita. So
Anita.
I wish I could be her.
She's got the, so Anita's an artist, but Anita's like selling her art and
she's
doing
a real
her
artist.
She's a real artist, and Faye sort of has to put the real artist. She wants to have a gallery, right? And it's not happening. So, but she's making do, and she's doing her thing. She's getting all these orders on Etsy, and so she's her own person. And then all of that sort of has to get sort of put aside to deal with what's happening. And I just love Faye. I love, also with illness, I feel like family and friends can either help or be a big pain in the butt, because not everybody's going to be on the same page. And because, you already said he's got kids from an earlier marriage. And so there's that. I mean, it's not like she doesn't have enough to deal with. And then she has to deal with the doctors and these kids, these grown kids, but still his kids. And I just think she is such a strong person. And yet, and an artist, and not that those two can't go together, but I love that they do, and I love that she is. I love her, and I love her humor. So I wrote down these two quick lines, because I love the way you infuse humor into the book, which keeps it going. It's like any of us who have something going on. It can't all be heavy Chevy. I mean, there have to be moments where you need a release, and there are these moments of release throughout the book. Either when Faye is she's talking to her dog Lola, that dog doesn't do anything she wants her to do. It's hilarious, And so she has all these moments and these dialogues or these monologues in her head, and I just think these lines are funny, so I'm going to read them. And then Paul, who just is such a cool guy because he keeps his ex-wife in the picture, Brenda. She calls her Faye. I love that. She's knocking on the Faye. And so she wants Paul to throw her some money because she wants to have a meditation. Meditation studio. So when Paul's ex, asks him for a loan so she can build a meditation studio, and Faye asks, what kind of repayment schedule are we talking here, Brenda? And she says, I'll have to meditate on that. I mean, I find myself laughing at this book sometimes because those are real people, and those are these perfect asides that I think find a nice balance.
Good. Well, I do. My husband does have an ex-wife, and he does have kids. And I get along with everybody. We all are one happy family now, 34 years in, but it wasn't always that way. There was a lot of conflict, definitely. A lot of it related to the fact that I was a younger woman, even though I was like so nice. I think sometimes when there's like a younger, older, it's hard to see the younger woman as a person. And I think I was seen as a symbol a lot, and when we got married in California, and but I also wanted to create conflict. There's a technical thing about everybody can't get along, or your book is boring. So I wanted to have an ex-wife who was sort of meddlesome. I wanted to have the grown kids who were kind of disregarding her. And just that, I've heard back from almost everybody who's read this has said the same thing, that anytime there's a hospital scene in their own family, this exact thing happens. Everybody comes together. They've got different ideas of what should happen. And so I wanted to create some of that. My research on this, though, I made Bob write every single thing down. I thought, I don't want to ever be in a position of saying, Bob told me what he wants, and then his son's saying, well, no, Dad wouldn't want it that way. I'm like, yeah, right.
Smart.
Write everything down. So it's, I just tried to create a little bit of chaos in this chaotic situation by using my family, as I pretty much always do.
Yeah.
But
it works. I don't know if we want to go into what I in my mind was calling the escape hatch. I mean, do we want to leave something to be to the imagination? Do you want to like dangle a tiny carrot?
I can tell you that's true. I'll tell you that part. Everybody, I'll tell you the fantasy parts are all totally true.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It revolves around an apartment building that I have a serious crush on. And that I walk my dog by, who is the dog in the book. Absolutely. Was based on that, my true dog, who actually is more like a cat. But there's a man who came out of that building who's sort of like a pediatrician. I kind of developed this little... I walk by this every day when I'm walking the dog. I can tell you, though, and I want Bob to hear this, that my slight little crush on my pediatrician does not know I'm alive. I think he thinks I'm a dog walker, because I only see him walking the dog and I wave, So, but anyway, it's the truth of the matter is, when you're going through something that's upsetting, at least for me, I just needed an escape. I needed to imagine a different life, or try to figure out how I'm going to create a different life. The life expectancy, this is the terrible thing about Alzheimer's. I'm in a support group with women in my same situation, and no one wants their husband to deteriorate so far that he's in a nursing home for 5 years or longer. The Ronald Reagan syndrome. We're all afraid of that.
Right, the long goodbye.
Right. And so it's a terrible disease where you want your husband to die before he gets to that point. It's a terrible feeling to have, but everybody who goes through this does. And if you have that feeling out there, don't feel guilty about it, because everybody does. But so I spent a lot of time wondering how my life will be after, and how I'll survive, and how can I walk around our apartment and not be sad over every little thing I see. So it was born out of necessity, and tried to, like you said, I tried to put it in different places to kind of lighten it up, so it wasn't a really heavy story about loss. It's about being found too, hopefully.
Yeah.
Mary,
I love that.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just want to let you know we have a lot of viewers who really connected with this experience, and they appreciate you writing about it.
Oh, good.
Including your editor, Carrie Farron, who adds, "My family is dealing with this in a different form. So from the moment I heard about this, I was really committed to making this happen. But this book is also a love story about New York." And then Linda, who also is dealing with a loved one suffering from Alzheimer's, asks, was it hard for you to share these stories that are true, or is it therapeutic?
I'd say it's definitely therapeutic. And part of, me not really knowing that you're not supposed to just tell the truth, I have a hard time. I'm not a very good liar at all. So I know when I was doing promotion for Two Sisters, I just would blurt out everything that happened with my sister, and we would be like, can you believe that? So I think I got my husband's permission before I even wrote about him. And I think that's important. I think you don't want your loved one to feel like they're being used or they're being embarrassed. Unfortunately, there's a lot of shame surrounding Alzheimer's. You don't want to say your husband has Alzheimer's, and you don't want everyone seeing him and going, oh, So, but I will say that talking about it and telling people, we just recently told our co-op, I live in a very small building, and it was just horrible to tell them that Bob can't do this and that anymore. And when you do talk about it, you'll be amazed at how much support. People will just surround you with love, and that's exactly what you hope for. So, Linda, if you're still listening, definitely, I think support groups, even online support groups, are so helpful because it's very, very hard. It's hard to be the caretaker of somebody, even if it's your parent. It's even harder with your parent, unless you live with them. But the reason I called this book Left is because that's what happens. You are left little by little by little right before your eyes. And it's almost this constant heartbreak, or things will look like they're okay, and then, you can see it happen again. So you're just little bit left, and trying to kind of maintain happiness and joy and humor. I think if Bob lost his humor, that would really kill me.
Yeah.
I could tell you last night, could I tell you one quick thing he said?
Yeah.
He has to wear this gizmo in his mouth because one of the things that happens when you have advancing dementia or Alzheimer's is your brain doesn't tell you to breathe as much as it should sometimes at night. It's like a form of sleep apnea, but not snoring. It's just, you just stop breathing. So he has to wear this thing in his mouth, and it could be fatal. So I said to him, I was nagging him last night, get that, he hates it. Get that thing, get it in your mouth, I don't want to. And I said, do you want me to be a widow? And he said, I want you a little bit nicer. Now, I mean, isn't that clever? So it's those moments.
Oh my God.
It's those moments that make us both laugh.
Yes.
And just, I hope that it continues. I hope his personality continues right to the very, very end. You know.
Yeah.
That would be the best case scenario in this not great case.
Right. Wow. Well, and that is a perfect example of the sadness being offset by his sense of humor, your sense of humor, recognizing that you need that or it's just too much to bear. So I think that I've asked all of my questions. I don't know if there are any more. We're good. Is there anything else that I think we've said it all. If there's anything else that you wanted to say before we kind of sign off?
I just want to say that the original title was Left, and then my brilliant editor, Carrie Farron, suggested putting on a love story, adding that to the title so that everyone knew that it really is a love story. And that's what I wanted to tell was a love story. I'm living a love story, I believe, even though they're difficult things. So that, I hope, is more than anything, I hope it comes across that it's a story about love.
Well, that is why I love this book, because it is a love story. And I'm so glad that Carrie thought to do that, and I'm so glad that you agreed with her that's what needed to be added on to this. I have mutilated this book and underlined so many lines from this book and passages because it's just that good. It's beautiful. It is a beautiful story about two people who truly love each other. And thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really a joy. Thank you so much.
Okay. Left, Mary Hogan, love story.